And would like to now hand over to Camila and Eduardo, who work for the eMinds lab at the University of Coimbra, if I have pronounced it correctly, researching digital technologies' impact on human cognition. And they'll be sharing some insights into how distance impacts on education and what can we do about that. So I'm really excited about this, really looking forward to that. And thank you very much for offering this webinar. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Gabriel, for having us, and thank you everyone for being here with us. Before starting, I would like to say that I've been facing, besides everything we've been facing here in Brazil, we've also been facing some internet issues. So if it's necessary, Professor Eduardo has a link for the presentation. So if anything happens with my connection, he has the link and you can go on watching it. And then I will try to come back, but everything is fine now with the connection. I'm just leaving this advice for Gabriel because I forgot to say that, okay? So my name is Camila. I am a researcher here in Brazil and in Portugal with Professor Eduardo. I'm writing my doctoral thesis. And I also have been doing research on cognition and technologies in education at our research group, the eMinds lab. And we have been looking for connections between human mind, human cognition, artificial intelligence, and its possible implications for education and psychology. Since the coronavirus started spreading, we have been asking ourselves questions that are a little different from the ones we were looking to address before all this started. And we are probably looking to raise too much concerns here and not so many responses yet, as this research is an ongoing one. And so based on research we have been doing on new theses on human cognition, we brought here some discussions connected to online presence versus in-class presence, how cognition can be shared, and some of our potentialities to face the challenges that have been posed to us, especially in the eye of this coronavirus storm, but not restricted to it. So these are two questions that have been guiding us through our research. Why is it so challenging to teach and learn online? And what are the possible elements responsible for turning distance experiences so distinctive from in-class experiences? We brought here a few concepts from the phenomenological tradition, a few concepts from American pragmatism, and how cognition extends beyond the brain, and also the internet and its sense of community based on the web extended mind. So Sean Gallagher from the University of Memphis, which is one of the philosophers that have been connecting cognition to phenomenology, while building an approach to cognition known as the embodied cognition, once asked Dalai Lama if there would be any difference between meditating in group or alone. With his question, he wanted to find out more about doing it yourself or sharing the practice with others. He wanted to explore another form of intersubjectivity, which is beyond the dominant cognitivist model based on the brain and mirror neurons or the theory of mind. He believes there is more to see besides synapses in the brain if we want to achieve a wider understanding of what happens when we are in the presence of other people, interacting with them, seeing them face to face. Maybe what he was trying to find out was quite close to what we all have been talking about regarding learning and teaching online. Phenomenology is full of concepts and thoughts regarding presence, intersubjectivity, connections, how we relate to others, and even with ourselves. It is a branch of philosophy dedicated to the study of mind-world dyad or the self-other world triad. And in the phenomenological tradition, we have a few authors here that we brought here. Besides Gallagher, we are going to talk about a few ideas from Hubert Dreyfus and Alva Noe. These are two authors whose philosophy is inspired by the phenomenological tradition, and they lead us to think through online presence versus in-person presence. What is it that makes one so different from the other? When a teacher arrives and looks at his class of students, he can feel them. the face-to-face encounter makes it possible to, for example, hear their tone of voice or see their faces. When we as instructors can't see our class as a whole, we lack a sense of the class, according to Dreyfus. We could say that we lack the presence of our students as a dynamic system. That is what a class is, a system in which each part interferes in the other and may provoke changes in the system's unicity. This system includes the tutor, who can learn much more while sharing the same learning environment with his students. And Dreyfus would also say that surprise and risk are two of the main elements that are present on face-to-face learning environments. These elements wouldn't be present in an online learning situation, as Dreyfus demonstrates in his 6-stage learning theory, his model for skill acquisition, which he develops in order to comprehend the stages a student needs to follow if he or she desires to learn something effectively, leaving the novice state to become a master. I won't have time here to go through all of the 6 learning stages drawn by Dreyfus, but an important feature of it would be that it is unlikely that we go beyond the 3rd stage of his theory if we are learning only online, with the tutor physically distant from his pupil. And that would be because of the absence of feeling, emotions, and the whole body that would prevent the student from experiencing whatever he or she needs to experience when progressing in any matter, be it learning to drive or to philosophize, for example. Alva Noe wrote a number of essays in which he discusses the different kinds of presence. So the world is present to us when we engage in our activities. When we act, we perceive. When we are in the same physical environment as other people, we relate to each other, even if this group is divided in two, like teachers and students or actors and audience, to recall an example from him. We act as a system. Again, a student may interrupt the teacher. An actor may forget his lines, leading the audience to a collective embarrassment, and so on. It is different when we record a video for our students, or when we watch a movie instead of a play, or even when we have classes using online platforms. When we are online, all we can see is a series of atomized faces in small boxes on a Zoom or Hangout screen, each of them in a particular environment. So there is no common environment. We don't have a common collective sense. We don't share this environment and its felt qualities, to use John Dewey's words. We're going to come back to them later. And we can't infer if our students seem focused or sparse. We can't see their legs, if they are shaking in anxiety, or there's no whispering, no noises, and everybody must wait before turning their microphones on. And that may result in less spontaneity. That's what we've been experiencing these days, I guess. So even if we had the most advanced sound and image technologies, what would we still lack? Would our issues be solved? That's another question we've been trying to address. So probably not, because we would still lack eye movements, head motion, gesture, posture, intercorporeality. So lots of things that are present only when we actually are with each other. The American pragmatist John Dewey is another great researcher to offer a few interesting ideas regarding different dimensions of experience and aesthetics. Dewey postulates that each experience has its felt qualities. But what does it mean? So according to Mark Johnson, which is a philosopher who is one of the proponents of the embodied cognition thesis and a researcher of Dewey's ideas, we tend to downplay the importance of qualities as part of meaning. And we shouldn't do that, because, as Johnson argues, it is grounded in bodily experience. It arises from our feeling of quality, sensory patterns, movements, changes, and emotional contours. So meaning depends on our experiencing and assessing the qualities of situations. Here we have a quote from Johnson's book, The Meaning of the Body. Dewey takes great pains to remind us that the primary locus of human experience is not atomistic sense impressions, but rather what he called the situation. By these, he meant not just our physical setting, but the whole complex of physical, biological, social, and cultural conditions that constitute any given experience, experience taken in its fullest, deepest, richest, broadest sense. So when the class is online, we lack this sense of the situation. It is hard to grasp the felt qualities, the sense of the class, to merge Johnson's ideas with some of Dreyfus and Noah's ideas, and also Gallagher's. This maybe is the bad news, but what good news is there? So we owe our capacity of shared cognition, our skilled capacity to share our minds. Not everything is in the head. As we've seen, our experiences result from a mix between the agent, which is a cognizer, and its environment. It includes culture, people, arts, education, institutions, technologies. This is an idea shared by most of the thinkers associated to a framework known as the 4E cognition: embedded, inactive, embodied, and extended. So as we've seen, cognition is embodied. We feel the qualities of our experiences in our body. We need to have the experience of the bodies of other people to interact with them. Cognition is inactive in the sense that we should act if we want to perceive the world and make sense of it. Cognition is embedded in the social, cultural, and to include the internet virtual environment. And cognition is extended. We are cyborgs, not necessarily in the science fiction sense, but natural-born cyborgs. Human beings able to merge with technologies that extend our minds out of our bodies and brains and brain. These are the ideas from Andy Clark. And it includes other people's minds in the sense that we may share the same difficulties or live a similar situation. And even though we perceive these moments in different ways, depending on our perspectives, views, and interests, there is a sense of shared cognition. What we have been thinking about is how the internet, may help us create and sustain these connections, especially if we are able to talk in an open, honest way. It is in this sense of community that we believe we must focus. Maybe it's time for a distributed cognitive awareness, time for sharing at its best, and to think, what can we do when we connect to technologies? We can improve our cognitive capacities as long as these technologies in fact result in body and brain extensions that allow us to strengthen reasoning, improve creativity skills, expand our capacity to develop projects and ideas. And in a similar way, we may improve our cognitive capacities by means of connecting with each other. We could really be then each other's cognitive extensions. That's what we are trying to develop here. So if the basic idea of the extended mind is that the mind extends beyond the biological brain and body through the world, including technologies, from the idea of the extended mind emerges another one, which would be the web extended mind, a concept coined by Paul Smart. And it is basically the extended mind thesis applied to the specific social technical context of the web. Technological and informational elements of the web can, at least sometimes, serve as part of the mechanistic substrate that realizes human mental states and processes. It's interesting to notice that when defining the fundamental elements for a technology to be considered an extension of someone's mind, Clark highlights the need for this technology to be reliable. How can the internet be a reliable environment? The web becomes a trustworthy environment as people responsible for its constitution work for it, so us. And we need to feel comfortable while using the internet, especially when it comes to education, to using it for e-learning purposes. So evoking psychologist James Gibson, we should be aware of the affordances that emerge from the relationship between teachers and students in this new environment. And the novel character of this relationship emerges not only due to its online features, but because it results from the urgency of the pandemic crisis we're living, that has also been contributing to raise anxiety and uncertainty levels among the whole scholarly community. So we should be aware of social affordances, emotional, affective affordances, not just the physical ones, just say. And why is it so significant in these days? So we have been told to live in isolation. However, it doesn't mean we need to think in isolation and avoid exchanging ideas, comments, and experiences. In fact, we believe this is precisely what we should do even more right now, share and think together, because it is not easy to articulate content for students online, especially if you have not prepared it in advance and nobody was prepared for the crisis. It's usually regular online courses. Usually we can prepare them in advance, and it didn't happen in the crisis, the coronavirus crisis. But it may become easier if we share practices, worries, concerns, and somehow transcend social isolation, preventing it from becoming a situation of total isolation. We are facing a common problem and its consequences in so many countries, and we have probably been facing similar issues regarding our daily classes, students, learning contents and contexts. So why not communicate about it and commit with each other in a healthy, extended way? For example, it may be hard to record and edit the content for an online class, but it may become easier if teachers share their doubts concerning software and apps. It may also be a good idea to share your concerns with your students, even those related to your personal life, sometimes about, I don't know, your family and the challenges you've been facing as an educator and as a person, to encourage them to share their own thoughts on the changes they have been facing daily. Maybe it can be a good idea. And after all, why do teachers have to be sudden heroes of the online education? Why have teachers been feeling the pressure to become a YouTuber suddenly and things like that? It makes no sense. And it is also imperative to acknowledge that what these changes mean for the students' routines. One may believe their bedrooms are like the ones on the left when they are actually like the ones on the right. Very common here in Brazil. So why not acting in a more flexible, horizontal way, instead of working hard to transpose to online environments the same old problems that were born and persist in the traditional in-class education? One-to-many approach may not be the best one when we use the internet to interact. Because the internet has made the interactions flexible, creating a network of parallel distributed conversations, transactions, relationships. And where is the center of it? Well, the internet is decentralized. That is an underlying feature of it. So even when the pandemic crisis comes to an end and we possibly return to our traditional face-to-face learning environments, we should remember our capacity of sharing practices, acting as each other's cognitive extensions, being empathetic, being more open and caring, and nurturing each other's development. After all, we believe this is about education, be it online or in class. Well, we know we've brought too much food for thought here, but the work is still ongoing. We've been going deeper in these subjects, and we would like to hear from you some ideas regarding what I've said here, anything you would like to share, comments, and so on. That's it. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.